Welcome back to Turn and Burn. So today, Fred and I are doing something a little bit different. We are calling it a side dish. It's a bonus content feature where Fred and I just talk to each other, share some stories of our own, and let you get to know us a little bit. It's also an opportunity for us to say thank you. After 5 very different, very fun episodes, we've gathered a little bit of an audience. We're so grateful for our loyal fans and for everybody who likes and shares and does all the things, and sends reviews and 5 stars, up on Spotify and all that stuff. So thank you very much for hanging in there with us. And so, today we're going to spend a half hour or so just letting you get to know us a little bit, and so that you can understand who it is that is leading this weird little world that we're living in.
Wait, Sarah, hold on. So before we do that, though, can I say a thanks? And listen, do not edit this because I want this to be, since I'm sincere with this, right? I'm hearing you. So when Sarah and I started this project, when we talked about it, what was this, last summer, right?
It was
like July or August. With this whole idea, we didn't know where it was going to go. So like Sarah echoed, we do appreciate everything you guys do. But I want to send a special thank you to Sarah. And this is, Sarah, you told me something yesterday that I did not realize. This is, what is it, National Women's Month?
Yeah, not Women's History. Yeah.
So I want to thank you for putting so much effort. Guys, if you don't know, Sarah puts a lot of time into this. I'm so serious. And we were just talking about this, and I'm like, this doesn't work without you. So I want to say thank you so much for this, everything that you do. And, sometimes these things go unnoticed, but I truly want to let you know I do notice and I totally appreciate everything that you do.
Because this show is not.
And wherever we go with this, it's all because of you. So I appreciate it.
Oh my God. Listen,
don't cut this either. You better
I'm not going to. But you're being so beautiful and supportive. And I think that people should know that Fred and I have never met. Right?
We haven't.
We've never met. We met on the internet. I think we met through LinkedIn. And from the first time that we spoke to each other on the phone, I think it was like this endless conversation. We just hit it off, and and it was like we were trying to figure out ways to work together. Mm-hmm. And that was how we reconnected last summer, was that, we were trying to bid a job together. Fred was trying to bring me in on something. Yeah. And then he said, "Do you want to do a podcast?" And I was like, "Fuck yeah." So it's I can't ask for a better partner. I will throw the love back, right? Because I can't ask for a better partner. He's supportive and he's fun, and he doesn't make my life any more difficult, which is, that's a good thing. And so I'm just glad that we're doing this together. I think that it's been such a delight. And weirdly, we're getting to know each other better week over week. We're becoming besties, which is so random.
And it means we now have to put a meeting together at some point here in this year. We cannot let 2024 go by and
I'm not coming to Texas. It's too fucking hot down there.
I agree. Don't do that. I'm not. Well, in New York's perfect in the summer, so I guess I'm coming to New York. Plus, I got to meet Dave, our previous guest.
It's true. So, we got to go to Philomena's and get a slice, right? And hang out with Kenny and Dave for sure. Yeah. All right. So launch. Thank you again. That was very sweet.
No, thank you. Right. So that was 5 years ago now, Sarah, right? When that phone call, roughly, when we spoke for the first time. So that's kind of where it started. So I kind of got this idea, Sarah. As you all know, I was in restaurants my whole life. I was, operator for a very prominent organization here. And so I did that for years at a GM level. And I got this idea one day, just freaking, I had my daughter. She was probably 1 or 2 at the time. And, it was a lot of hours, right? We know this, 70, 80 hours a week easily during the holidays. And so missed out on a lot, lost, a lot of girlfriends going up through the ranks. Thank God my wife was patient. But so I had an idea, how can I impact other restaurant owners more so to do it the way that this prominent restaurant organization did it, right? Because, they run a tight ship. Those that know me know who I'm talking about. I don't want to say names and have them come after me. So I started serving with them in 2004, my senior year in college. And then once I graduated in 2005, they offered me the management position. So I started literally in 2005. Yep. I became a GM in 2011. So it took me about 6 years going through the ranks. That's from managing as a floor manager. I told that story, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately graduating into kitchen manager. And then there's levels to it, right? You go from 6 down to 2, and then you become a number 2, right? Which is when you're the GM's right-hand man.
Okay.
And then at that point, it's just a matter of getting your shot, right? So you're against all these other number 2s. I mean, it's a really truly cool, small fraternity, right?
Yeah.
Because there's only, on that level is 40 plus restaurants. So you're talking about a small handful of guys that get the opportunity. So I was definitely grateful to do it. And then you're doing it at a high level. I mean, these restaurants are massive. They're busy. So the amount of knowledge over the years, Sarah, that I obtained with this organization, just kind of going through the ranks, learning the ins and outs of running a restaurant. I was thinking to myself, like, why don't I just help others do it? And so the last particular location I was at, it was truly the flagship for the entire organization. So everything ran through that location first, whether it was training, equipment, dishes, new entrees, you name it. It was a beast. So I think they labeled it the beast. And so with all that knowledge, I just, took the opportunity to say, you know what, let me bet on myself. You and I were just talking about that, right? Just, jumping out and betting on yourself. And so I came up with a cool name, Gordon Restaurant Consulting. And I formed my LLC and got all my, stuff together, needed bank accounts and, all that stuff when you become an entrepreneur, right? And I took a leap of faith and I told my wife I was doing this, but look, I tricked her. I was like, hey, this is going to be a way I spend more time with you. And she's like, oh, okay, do it. And I was like, okay.
She really believed that because entrepreneurs are like, they're so not checked into the world. Yeah, no, exactly. Wow. Yeah, that's not.
But
that's not good.
She was supportive, and so that was cool. That if she didn't feel good about it, then this wouldn't be happening. So I took a leap of faith, sent in my resignation, and I think I remember walking out that day. It was surreal, and I started, and that's kind of where you and I kind of linked up a few weeks after that. So
which is like crazy. Yeah,
remember what you told me on that first? So
of course not. There's been a lot of wine between then and now.
Well, that's true. Look, vodka for me. But Sarah, there are moments in lives where you have that, like, damn, this woman or this person truly, people come into your lives for certain reasons, right? And at the time, I didn't know that it would come to this when you think about it, full circle, right?
Yeah.
But you reached out to me, and of course we talked about what you just mentioned, forming a partnership, and you were like, hey, this is what I do. I do marketing. You might want to do this with your website.
I can't help it.
So you're literally giving me information. I was like, man, this is pretty cool. I have no idea who this woman is, right? She just reached out to me about forming, but she's giving me tips on how to improve what I do from a marketing standpoint. Yeah. So I thought that was pretty cool and interesting. And, again, it just goes to show who you are. So that was our first conversation. He was like, hey, you might want to switch this up. And
that doesn't surprise
you even
me.
helped me with my verbiage as far as explaining about what I do. And you said, hey, just send it to me. And then an hour later, you sent this whole paragraph back to me as far as how I should structure my verbiage.
I don't remember that at all. That's so funny. But anybody that knows me that is listening to this, is probably nodding right now. So tell people a little bit, just as an extension of that, about what you do right now, just working with clients, what kinds of, you can talk about one of your recent client relationships, whatever. I know you work with food trucks and you work with startups. What kinds of stuff do you specialize in?
So basically what happens, Sarah, is obviously if anyone out there that's looking for any type of restaurant consulting, because it's pretty broad, right?
Yeah, sure.
And I remember reading, the $1 Million Consultant book, because I was trying to figure out how do I do this, right? And just from a consulting standpoint, and ultimately what it kind of evolved to, because there's been tweaks along the way, trying to figure out the best way. And so ultimately now what I've kind of, I guess, graduated to is more so operations, right? So most restaurant owners that reach out to me, they're trying to figure out how to improve their operation. I can sprinkle in openings and that sort. I mean, I don't know about New York, but permitting here in Houston it's a journey. and it's
Yeah,
almost
I'm sure
you
in the
definitely
city here
appreciate it
too.
once you get.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a beast. So I do have I do have some experience in that as well. I have a team of guys and girls that I reach out to, like
Mm.
yourself, right, from a brand
Yeah.
marketing standpoint, chefs, mixologists, culinary side, you name it,
Hmm.
just to help restaurants. So it depends on what owners are looking for. My specialty, though, or my true, I guess, heart, what I love to do is just the operations, the
Yeah.
daily grind of how to run your restaurant, how to squeeze every drop of that lemon, right,
Mm.
to
Yeah.
get the most profit.
Yeah.
And it's different now, Sarah, than it was, prior to COVID. I would say that the margins aren't as big. And
Right.
honestly, restaurants never had a large margin, right? I
Right.
mean, you're
Yeah. It's
talking,
not that kind of industry.
yeah, you're
Yeah.
talking 12, 13 cents on the dollar if you're,
Yep.
if you're really good at it. And I would probably say we're probably at, 8, 9, 10 cents now, just the
Hmm.
way, things are, just in
Right.
inflation part of things. So what I typically do is, owners reach out and whatever they need from that standpoint, I provide that service. I typically work with them, in their restaurants typically, because
Yep.
for me, that's the best way to get value, right?
Yeah, because you're
I
really
can,
hands-on with these guys. I
yeah,
mean, your whole
absolutely.
week this week is, helping this new restaurant open. These guys
Mm-hmm.
that just moved down actually from New York to Houston,
Mm-hmm.
and they're opening a
Coincidentally.
restaurant. And yeah, Fred's been telling me all these stories over the
Mm-hmm.
last few weeks of working with these people. But you can also provide these services all over, which is, kind of the beauty of the model that you've created, right? That like if you had people in different areas, you would just reach out to them and have them, do whatever, like menu planning or
We
recipe
do the whole thing.
development or all that
Yep.
stuff. Yeah,
Yep.
just pretty
We
cool.
met with vendors. We're getting vendors established now, from beer,
Yep.
liquor, wine to the food. We're
Yep.
meeting today actually at a restaurant supply, to outsource some of the smallware equipment.
Hmm.
We're replacing equipment. I'm meeting with the manager tomorrow that's going to be hired. So I'm putting together a contract that's going to kind of keep him in place for the first year.
So you're doing all the staffing and stuff too, right?
Staffing, yep,
Yeah.
training.
Oh, that's cool.
I did a whole, 8-step service training that I'm implementing
Yep.
with the owners. And again, for me, it's and I take that from where I came from, that
Hmm.
hands-on type of training.
Yeah.
That's just the best value, Sarah. And especially in
Yeah.
this environment where, there's so much out there that's coming at you. It's always nice to know that you have someone that's kind of there holding your hand,
Yeah.
teaching you that stuff. And it sticks. It sticks
Yeah.
better, right? How many
No,
times
for
have you
sure. Yeah, I
taught
mean,
me
there's a high
email?
rate of failure in this
Yeah.
industry, right? And so, yeah, to know that you have somebody who has done this before, who's
Mm-hmm.
been, who's been a consultant for as long as you have been, but also
Mm-hmm.
just been in the industry and kind of seen all the ups and downs and like where, restaurants can really make big bad choices.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's good for especially for people that I mean, everybody knows about this. There's so many people that think I'm just going to open a restaurant and they really don't have,
Mm-hmm.
and if they haven't spent a lot of time in the space, right, then they don't really understand how stressful,
Yeah, taxing
and
it is.
yeah, I mean, it's just, and how high or how likely it is that they're going to fail. I mean, and I know people that have been in the industry for a long time and, they still struggle with that. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not, so it's, but there's some kind of like fantasy around opening a restaurant, for people that are not in the industry. That, it's, I don't know if it's because of movies or like what the deal is, but yeah, I mean, people seem to really, think that that's like a fun thing to do. And then they dump $200,000 into
I
it.
know.
And, and 6 months later it closes its
Yeah.
doors
It's
because,
sad.
they don't know how to allocate budget and they don't know, I mean, and
Mm-hmm.
we see it everywhere. Like it's, from rural areas to major cities, that like
Sarah,
it's restaurant industry is so hard.
it is, and it's funny. I can't tell you how many times I've heard this. I'll ask the question, how'd you get started? How'd you get to this with your restaurant?
Yeah.
And listen, this is the answer literally. Oh, I made a Super Bowl dip for my friends and they said, oh, it was this dip was so amazing. You should start a
You
restaurant.
should start a restaurant.
And
Yeah.
I'm like, no, that cannot be the answer.
Yeah.
But no, seriously, it happens that way. And you're right. People think it's a cakewalk and it's truly a
Yeah.
grind.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many times I walk in. First thing I say is, well, where's your inventory? Let me see, the kind of numbers on your food costs you're running. And they look at me like, inventory? I'm like, oh my God. this is going to be an interesting
This is
one,
going to
right?
be hard.
Like
Yeah.
inventory, what is that? I'm like, oh my god, you're just running blind here. As much as food costs nowadays, you're just ordering whatever. But I mean, that's just the reality. And
Yeah.
it's out there, Sarah, and it's
Yeah.
scary. And like you said, with the success rate, yeah, that's
Yeah.
not it's not odds in your favor, right?
No,
So
and a lot of
it's
people can't afford to make big mistakes, right? And
mm,
unfortunately, a lot of people, they put all of their money into like developing the space, right?
hmm
And staffing and all of those things, right? And
hmm
doing all the stuff that you're doing right now, but then they don't allocate any money for the actual the growth of a
hmm
planning stage where it's like, where do you want to be a year from now, right? Like,
hmm
how are you going to actually pull customers in? They don't, so budgeting is a huge part of it.
yeah.
But I mean, that's where I come in, right? That's the secondary piece, and the number of people who don't, they know that they need a brand, they know that they need Instagram, they know they need to put food porn pictures up and do all that
hmm
stuff. But at the end of the day, that stuff takes a stupid amount of time to really like build an audience around. And anybody who's tried to do it, I mean, I'm doing it right now with the podcast. It's a lot of
hmm
work, and it's
hmm
like you have to be consistent. We talked to again Dave at Philomena's about that. I mean, he's live on TikTok every freaking
hmm
day, just trying to get people to come to Queens and eat his pizza. I mean, you have to be like, really vigilant about it. If you can't afford to pay someone to do it, or you just, you want to do it yourself and put your face out there, then you have to do it every day or every
That's
week
true.
at least. You have to, and people don't budget for that kind of time. And you and I both know that as it is, the hours in restaurants are like taxing for owners in particular, right? I mean, they don't even realize how many hours they're going to put in.
And not only that, you have so many other things that you're being pulled in the
Oh
direction
yeah.
of that's needed, right? And
Yeah.
again, kudos to those that can do it, like
Hmm.
Dave, right? That
Yeah.
understands the importance of it.
Yeah.
But there are people such as yourself. Then I guess we could segue into that right now.
Sure. Sure.
That can take care of this and make it a lot easier so that you can focus on the other things. So,
Yeah. I
uh,
mean, like, it's funny because I started, I mean, I have a long sort of trajectory, and that started with restaurants actually, and I'm going to tell those stories in a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I started my consulting business officially back in 2009, and one of my first clients was this sort of restaurant group, if you will, like in Boston area, and that was like 2010, I think. And we still work together, and he's I mean, we're friends. We take care of each other. I've been there through so many things. I'm like a part of the restaurant family at this point.
yeah.
And they're, and I'm not there, right? I'm not, hands on. I mean, I think he and I have met in person, maybe 6 times, and just like for meetings. But he knows that he can text me. He knows that he can pick up the phone and call me. I mean, and I do. It started out where I was just doing like his website and his social media and like email marketing. And now I'm like, I do a lot of back end work with his like Toast, right? POS. And, I do a lot of tech support. I mean, obviously we do all of his events and his campaigns and all those things, because those are like the big money makers for him,
hmm
like the holiday events and stuff. And so, yeah, so it's ballooned into this whole thing of, of providing some operation support, while also doing like, like changing the prices here and like monitoring the different platforms and the data and the analytics, and trying to make sure that everything that he has going on is, to your point, like working for him.
hmm
He's actually supposed to come here in a couple of weeks, and we're going to talk about building out like his catering business and maybe making a little bit more emphasis on him as a personal chef, and like making, so it's like there's so many opportunities, I think, within the restaurant space to like, it's really just as much as your creativity and your time will
hmm
allow, for you to be able to say like, and I've always been the kind of person that if somebody this is how I built my consulting business. Like if somebody calls and says, "Can you do this?" I always just say yes, right? And
hmm
then even if I don't know how to do it, I just go figure it out, And so like that's basically how I've built, to the point of where I'm like a master generalist of like all of these things, both in the tech world, in the data and analytics and websites and user experience world, and in and in the marketing space, although I hate the word marketing. I like to say communications, but it's a lot of like, it's a lot of strategy, right? I mean, and that's the part that I think both you and I do in our own ways, right? Like you're doing it from a business operations standpoint, staffing and all that stuff. And, I'm doing it from an outreach standpoint and a messaging standpoint where it's like, like this, all of that stuff involves strategy. It's not just about pushing stuff out. I mean, you can tell the difference, I mean, it's really, you can tell the difference between when somebody's really thinking about it, and planning it versus, people just firing stuff out.
And that's the thing,
so,
Sarah. For me, I always ask the question, one, what's your budget, right? And then second, do you have, and I don't want to say the word marketing, but I typically say that, but what is your budget? How much do you have allocated monthly?
Yeah.
And I say monthly, right?
Yeah.
It's not, not just a one-time thing,
right?
But, tell us what would you suggest, right? Or what are your thoughts, let's say it that way, with, budgeting for that marketing, for restaurants monthly, how important is that?
I mean, like, I think it's incredibly important, but I also think that there is that launch part, depending on whether or not the business has existed for any period of time. For a startup, if you're just launching into a major metro, you and I had this conversation recently. I mean, you should expect to spend about $10,000 or $15,000 to put together a team and a PR presence and and a brand. If your idea of brand is a logo, then you're doing it wrong. Like if you do the brand building right and you do the website design right, then you don't have to do it over and over again. But yeah, the monthly piece is, it is important. And then it's just a matter of where are you, right? Like how much competition is around you, like how many other people are trying to do the same thing that you're doing. And then you have to build a strategy around that so that you can be competitive, right? Because everybody is trying to get everybody's attention on the internet, and there is a little bit of naivete, I would say, not just in the restaurant industry, but also in every business environment. I work with a lot of small businesses. I don't just work in the restaurant industry, right? And there is this kind of like, oh, so we just have a website and then people find us, right? And and they don't think about all the stuff that the internet has become since I started working with it, which was 1998 was when I started working with the internet, and so like everything that's now just about data, and how smart people need to be, or at least let somebody else be smart on your behalf. But absolutely allocating a budget for that is beyond just how many social media posts are you going to push out. It's the whole package, right? Like how do you pull people in? Do you build an email list? I can say, not that the most valuable thing that you can do is email. Email marketing is still the most valuable thing. And so if you have a website that's not pulling names, or if you're, pulling data into Toast, but you're not doing anything with it, then like you're missing a huge opportunity. But people have to know that. They have to know how to use those tools. And especially when you have something like Toast POS that has all these all this functionality, that's what they sell them on, right? They sell them on like, oh, it does all this stuff and SMS
email
marketing and right, all that stuff. But like you're looking at an owner, it's very cool. But you're looking at an owner that doesn't have a fucking clue, right? Like what to do with that, right? And so so it ends up sitting dormant. And Toast doesn't care because they still get paid, right? Like they don't care if you can use those tools or not. They're still getting paid.
That invoice is coming each month, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like you're still going to pay your Toast fees, based on however many sales. They will take a percentage regardless. So you're better off understanding the tools that you're investing in, or just like, or don't invest in those tools until you have the capacity to use them, so a lot of my work has become about integrations, right? It's a lot about like integrating all these different platforms, which is really tech work, right? And understanding, like, okay, we did that for a while and it didn't work, and so not doing that anymore. I mean, some of it is just about figuring out, like, are you even allocating your dollars wisely? If 3 people are liking your Instagram posts, then that's probably not a great use of your time, so or your money. So yeah, that's my 2 cents. I don't want to talk about communications anymore. It's just going to make me,
Well, no, but here's the
Nobody
thing,
cares.
Sarah. You're so freaking good at it. So listen. I'm so horrible, Sarah. Listen, she gives me a tutorial at least 2 times a week about
Oh
just
God.
operations of how
Yeah.
to freaking
Not
post
just you
and
though.
email, and I'm like, geez, I'm like a freaking from the Stone Age when it comes to that. And she's just like, do this, this, and this, and you're done. I'm
Yeah.
like, Sarah, it's not that easy for someone like
I
me.
know, but
But
there's a lot of stuff that I can't do, right? I mean, this is, for me, this is, it's just second nature. Now I've been doing it, and I've really come up learning this stuff, right? Like, I mean, when I started in this space, I was I was I was like sitting in my college dorm room getting stoned and teaching myself to code when I was supposed to be doing my philosophy homework, right? And but then like at the time there was no social media, like there was no, like, I mean, all of that digital space, there was like I love it. I just saw a meme that said something like, tell people that you were born before Google, and like watch their faces, like young people, right? Like, I mean, all of these things, like, we were getting to know the internet, right? And that was back when the internet was fun, before it became like a cesspool, like now it's a lot about like vigilance and data and all of these things that frankly they're not that fun. But it's like, thankfully I was already kind of tech minded. I grew up in a sort of a tech forward environment, like both my brother and my dad, and so like I was always around it. I always had computers growing up and stuff that my dad would bring home, like, so yeah, it's but I mean, I can't even remember a time when I wasn't like thinking about this stuff, which is kind of sad actually. Right?
Yeah, well,
But,
not me. This is my first computer, and I'm like 40 something, and I suck at it. And I was just trying to figure out how to download a link for an app the other day to open up a file, and look, it took me like an hour. I'm like, just call Sarah. But Sarah, you said something
tech
too
support.
that I know, right? Obviously, this is a restaurant podcast, and
yes.
Obviously, most of our listeners, majority, most likely, will be restaurant owners or in that space. But you also help not just restaurants. This doesn't extend to restaurants only. You also help other businesses as well with your business, right?
Yeah. I mean, I work. I try to stay in like a community development space. I really love working with small businesses. I mean, my mom was a small business owner. When I started the business, I was actually working in a little town called Torrington, Connecticut, which was a very depressed area. It was just, I mean, lots of like drug abuse and, struggling small business owners. And there's small towns like that all over the country. Yeah. There's somebody that we're going to have on, hopefully within the next couple of months, that we're going to get to talk to about that. This guy down in West Virginia. It was really my way when I started this of like helping small businesses just in that area of Connecticut, to have a voice in this digital space that was so new to everybody, and it's so that's kind of where my heart is working with small businesses. And so I work with, also like community development organizations. So people who kind of represent neighborhoods and small businesses. And, I do a lot of advisory work in terms of just like doing a full audit of, what these people do and helping them to become more efficient, very similar to what you do, but more from like an office standpoint, right? Like helping people to kind of understand their team dynamics and build systems and processes that make them more efficient. Right. So yeah, there's a bunch of different things that I do that have nothing to do with restaurants, but I have to say that my heart is a bit in the restaurant space because I, like I said, I started there for my very first job, and I've always just had such a love for the space and the people in the space. So, but yeah.
And you have speaking of your younger days in the industry,
yes,
you have some interesting, shall I say, stories from those younger days, right? You want to share some of those with us?
Yeah, no, I would love to. I was 15 and I got a job at Dunkin Donuts in this very small town up in Connecticut that if you like picture any John Hughes movie, right? So like Breakfast Club or Pretty in Pink, like any of those, right? Like, 16 Candles, that was the town that I grew up in. And I was very much like, so, very white, right? And like, so not a lot of diversity. The only diversity was like, who had money and who didn't, right? And, and so there's the only work was really like, waiting tables, and it was at like, there was like 4 restaurants in the whole place. So when the Dunkin Donuts opened, it was like, oh my God. Right. So it was brand new, and I went and I was like, I'm going to get a job at the Dunkin Donuts. I was like 15, I had braces, like the whole thing. It was like and I had to be able to work in a place that was close enough to my house because I didn't have a license. Right. Like, so my dad would have to come pick me up, whatever. So, so that was, it's a counter job. Right. And, and so it's boring, and there's whole periods in a small town where like, no one's coming in for donuts, right, at like 8:30 or whatever. And so what we had to do, we always had to be busy, that was the whole thing. And there was maybe like 2 people working at a time. I mean, it wasn't, the whole place was 2 rooms and a bathroom and a little office, right? I mean, we didn't even have a bakery there. They used to truck there was no drive-through, like they used to truck the donuts in. And so what we had to do is we would have to make sure that all the donuts were stocked out front all the time. But then at the end of the night, we would just throw all the donuts out. So it's like 8:00. We close at like 9:30 because the whole town shuts down at 9:30. Right. And and so, but we're supposed to be going and bringing the donuts still out to the front. Even I'm like, this is fucking stupid. Right. So, they had this machine, and I'm sure there's a name for it. And I'm sure that somebody listening to this will know the name of it. I don't remember the name of it, but it looked like a blender. And it had like this thing at the top that you put like these bags of like cream filling or jelly filling for the cream and jelly donuts, right? And so you would put it in the top of this machine, and then in the front it had these 2 metal prongs, And so what we were supposed to do, and like an electrical sort of interface, right? What we were supposed to do is take the shells of the donuts that were to be filled donuts and stick them on the front of, put them on the prongs and then hit the button and it would fill the donuts. Right. And like, and the cool thing about that is that you could be in the back. Like, you didn't have to be out front. You have to deal with customers. Like, I'm really not like a front of house person. I'm definitely more of like a back of house person. So, so I get this idea that I'm like, bored, and I'm like, how about, because you pump it up to like maybe 3 or something out of like 100. I'm like, how about if we put it at 100, right? And so we crank the thing like all the way up, right? And we stick the donuts on, we hit the button, and they go flying across the room and like explode against the wall. And like, and I'm just like, this is, like, this is so great. So then we practiced like, setting up the trash can in different places, so that we could like see how much trajectory we should get. Right. So that was my first job. And I was like, this is just ridiculous,
Call it a donut filler. Just call it a donut filler.
I don't know what it is. I'm sure that there's like some sort of a scientific name for it, but yeah, I was just, so but the way that job actually ended is that the girl, I mean, it was just a bunch of high school kids, right, like working there, and like the girls would come after school and then they would get changed in the back room and like into their Dunkin Donuts uniform, which was attractive, right, like this like completely just polo shirt and like horrible like Dickies khakis, whatever, right? And so like so they one of the girls saw when she was in the back, like changing, that the manager actually had like a camera set up and he was like filming the girls like changing in the back. And she like flipped out and like told everybody, and and he was like rarely there, and when he was there, he was always locked in his office, and like kids, like the girls are coming in and out and they're like changing and to go out front, whatever. And so, so of course that like went like wildfire through the whole, staff, and basically like everybody quit, it was just like a mass exodus, which I think is kind of funny because then that guy actually had to work, like, he actually had to come out and do his job because all these women like quit. The last place that I worked was this fine dining restaurant. It's very well known in this area. It's on a lake. They do probably 800 people a day in their like peak season, I would say between like Memorial Day and Labor Day, right? Like, it's just one of those areas that like everybody goes, New Yorkers go, right? Like it's a bed and breakfast with like a farm, and they make their own salad dressing. And I think they have a vineyard now. And like, so it's like this whole thing. And I went and applied for a job. It's an Austrian restaurant. I went and applied for a job as a waitress. And they were like, do you want to work in the back of house? And, I was terrified, but I said, okay, because the waitresses at that place, because it was an Austrian restaurant, they had to wear those goofy like dirndls. So it looks like lederhosen right. But they had to wear like the female version, like those. And I was like, oh my God, I don't have to wear that goofy outfit. Then yes, I will work in the back of house. And, and they installed me as the garde manger. And I had no idea what I was doing. Like I was like I had no idea what I was doing, and it was being like the kitchen was run by this like severe Austrian gentleman who was like terrifying and like barely spoke to anyone, and when he did, it was because you had done something wrong, you know. And like his son, and then this other Austrian guy who was kind of a goof but also could be terrifying. And you know, I mean, it was like you know, so that's a whole nother batch of stories that I will tell in a second. I'm going to give people a break, but yeah, that was I have so many fond memories, and I think about nowadays like what I would be like if I had stayed in that industry, because like we're gonna have some female chefs on, and some other like, you know, women that have worked in the industry and stuff, and you know, and my experience was so foundationally kind of positive, I guess, you know, because I also like grew up in kind of a an environment that was very challenging and very strict and very disciplined. And I think that I responded well to, you know, the kitchen environment because of that. Like it didn't feel unfamiliar to me. It didn't feel like if I was getting in trouble, it's because I was doing something wrong. I just responded really well to that kind of, you know, disciplinary structure, which I know a lot of people, they struggle with.
They do. But my thing is, how did you, after that first experience, it would have took a lot for me, Sarah, to go back to the industry. That's freaking horrible.
Yeah,
Jeez.
well, like I said, there was only so many jobs, right, in my town, and I needed a job. And the second place was actually far worse because I actually got fired because I wasn't attractive enough. I was like this scrappy, like, you know, it was like 93 or whatever, right? 94, you know, I was like this scrappy little, like, you know, 90s kid. And, you know, and yeah, I wasn't like, I didn't look like, if anybody's ever seen that Seinfeld episode where like all the waitresses look the same and Elaine like goes in and like makes trouble, it turns out they're all sisters. But like basically like everyone, all the women that worked there looked exactly the same, right? They were well endowed, and they had like long brown hair, and they were mostly wealthier than me, and so they had access to, you know, things that I didn't have access to. And you know, and yeah, so me and my best friend were two little scrappy, kind of scrawny, you know, like 90s kids. And yeah, we got fired from that place for not being attractive enough. And, you know, even though we were like the hardest workers there, and I'm not even kidding, like, you know, like
That's
most
crazy.
of the people were just standing around. Like it was like Starbucks before Starbucks, right? I mean, this is like Seattle, when the Seattle coffee scene was kind of like popping up all over the place, right? And so this was this rich assholes like version of doing that in our little town. And so yeah, so we got let go after like 10 months or something. What I learned from in that space was how to make ice cream, which was pretty cool, like in one of those big machines. So like, you know, that's fine. And again, I got to be in the basement, I got to be in the back of house, right? Like, you know, like not dealing with the customers, these like rich moms and their like bratty kids, and you know, like so yeah, so I was like, he kind of did me a favor. And then I think like 6 months later, that guy got busted for like tax evasion or something.
Wow.
And his wife left him, and I was like, see,
Wow.
karma, you know,
It
it's
is.
just karma.
It is.
Right?
Yeah. There you
he
go.
got what
The
he
things
deserved.
that you get away with in 1993, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, like, honestly, like, you know, and so like, actually, I think one of the reasons that the fine dining place wanted me in the kitchen is because I was this scrawny little thing, because they had this tiny little kitchen, right? And like I had my own station, like, you know, I had my cold prep station and a whole like, you know, kind of prep area, but like the line at that place was so small. And one of the jobs that I had to do was actually go behind the line and pull out trays of bread, right? Like every table got a tray of bread. And by the end of the summer, like my forearms were just like burn. I mean, just because I would have to literally like get behind these guys, you know, I'm like 110 pounds, right? Get behind these guys and then squat like straight down and pull these things of bread out and not touch anybody, right? I mean, literally with like 4 inches to spare between, you know, the guys working the line and me. And yeah, I mean, and yeah, when I went back to school, because I worked there 2 summers while I was in college. And I was going to school down in South Carolina, and yeah, and when I went back to school, people were like, "Did you like? Are you self-harming? Like, what is going on with your arm?" Like, because it just looked like I had been abused like the whole summer. I had like my fingers were all cut up. Like, I think the second summer, like I don't know if you can see it for people who are watching the video. I don't know how good the video is, but like I almost cut my thumb off. Like, you know, I mean, like, and I didn't even like go to the hospital, right? I just wrapped it and like just kept working. Going. Yeah, because there's like, you know, there's like, yeah, there's like 4 people in the the kitchen. Like, you can't just, you can't just run to the hospital, So I'm like bleeding all over the place, right? Like, I'm just like, but yeah.
Putting gloves on and just keep going.
Oh my God.
There
No, and
go.
this is when like nobody was even I was just bleeding through everything, so I'm like wrapping it with like probably some dirty rag, and then like taping it with duct tape. And so I'm walking around with like this giant thumb just trying to like hold on to stuff. And like, and they're just looking at me like, yeah, good, keep working, like keep working.
She's a keeper.
Oh my God. Like, yeah, I mean, they like, it's so funny. So, all right, I'll tell one more story about that place because I freaking love that job. So they, I used to have to cut like, so again, we did like 800 seats, right? So that's lunch and dinner only.
That's busy.
It's crazy, right? And like, and the turnover was just insane. The place wasn't that big, but yeah, it was just really popular. And again, fine dining. So, so one of my jobs was to every single person got a salad, right? Like, when that was like their first, they got a loaf of bread, a small loaf of bread and a salad. So my job was to cut 4 giant trash barrels, right? Full of lettuce every single day. Right. And on days where we knew we were going to be, probably going to get more like walk-ins and stuff, I had to do like 4 little ones, and it would take forever. Like my shift was supposed to start at like 8:30. I would get there at 7, just so that I could do the lettuce, because I also had all this other prep to do. Like I had to, shell lobsters and, do all my prep salads. And like, I mean, I had the whole cold app. It's summer, right? I had the whole cold app, thing I was doing all by myself, right? Like there was nobody else, there were these Austrian guys that I was supposed to be training that were like apprenticing there. Those guys were useless. They were just stoners, right? Like, and so I'm running the whole thing myself. And so, yeah, so, it was like, chop the core out of like the, green leaf lettuce or whatever, right? And then throw it away, and then chop, throw it in the sink, right? And then so I was just like, I was like a machine, just like doing this. And and so I, like, the day that I almost cut my thumb off, I stuck the knife in, went straight through my hand, and then went down to cut it. Like I was moving so fast. I mean, like it was horrible. And so like, and the closest sink is where all the lettuce is, right? I mean, I'm just like, oh my God, like, and I'm walking around like, trying not to make a spectacle of myself, because no one cares. Like no one cares that I've just cut my thumb off. They're just like, get the prep done. Like nobody cares. So that was like, that's one story with the lettuce. There's another story of the lettuce where, because my hands were like all beat up. I mean, my knife skills are not great, and they were not great then. I mean, and so like, I was wearing Band-Aids all the time. And then like, there was one day, because the waitresses were the ones that would throw the salad on the plates, right, and take it out. And there's this one day where I was like, oh my God, wait, everybody freeze, like all the wait staff, right, in my area. I'm like, everybody freeze. I lost a Band-Aid. And so we're going through like all the salad, right? Like trying to find the Band-Aid that like and like it took me, I'm not kidding, it took me like 15 years to eat salad in a restaurant because of my own, like, just how disgusting, like,
someone's
I mean, like,
on a
so gross.
bloody
Yeah,
Band-Aid.
exactly. Yeah, and like, and somebody was like, oh, it's just old ladies out there, like they're not, I'm like, maybe they won't notice. Like we never found it. Like it never came back. Like, like
Sarah, somebody ate that.
It was disgusting, right? And so, yeah, all right. So one last story about that place, about the lettuce. So, okay, so as I said, the guy who owned it was this like terrifying Austrian guy. And he would come in like once a week, and he would go in the back of the kitchen with like a bottle of red wine at like 10 o'clock in the morning. And he would pour himself, a couple of glasses of red wine, and he would do the fish, right? So that was like that's all he wanted to do. Everybody else was doing the prep and working the line, whatever. Every once in a while he'd work the grill on dinner. But like, honestly, like that's all he wanted to do, and so, yeah, he'd be back there, and like when Franz was in the kitchen, like everybody just froze. Like it was just like, hey, just do your work and don't say anything. We're not having any fun. There's no fun going on here. And so, yeah, because if he walked up to you and like just looked at what you were doing, like you knew he was going to find something, like that you were doing wrong. And so I'm like, again, I'm crushing it, right? Like I'm trying to get all this lettuce done, and I'm like, this is like my nightmare day after day is doing all this fucking lettuce, right? And like, and so he comes over and he stands next to the sink, which is full of lettuce that I'm about to like put in the big, spinner and like dump into the bucket, whatever. And he pulls out this one piece, and it's like 6 inches long, right? And he's like, what is this? and I'm like, I wish I could do the Austrian accent. Like, think, Schwarzenegger, but, so he's like, what is this? And I'm like, it's lettuce. And, like, I'm cutting it. And he's like, and he turns around to his son and he goes, what is this? Right. And then I felt bad, because like, here's his kid, and he's like, you're supposed to be training. He says, you're supposed to be training this girl. Right. And this girl is doing, like, he didn't even address me by name. Right.
He
like,
didn't know it. He didn't know it.
Yeah, probably not. Yeah. Right.
Skinny girl.
There's like 5 people in the kitchen. I was the girl, like, I mean, that was it. Everybody else was, male. So, so I'm like, I'm so sorry, whatever. And he turns around and he looks at me and he goes, what about the little old ladies? He's like, little old ladies can't eat this, like you have to make it small enough. And he takes the whole freaking gray thing that was almost full, right? This big bucket that was almost full. And he dumps the whole thing on my prep station, right? My big, stainless table. And he's like, do it again. All of it, right? And so but I mean, again, the thing is that I grew up with a father who was also that guy. My father did such a good job of preparing me to work for this guy, because like he was exactly that kind of guy, right? He was a run a finger along the, did you dust well enough kind of guy, right? And so, it took Franz, so he didn't trust me at all at that point, right? Like, I mean, so then every time he came in the kitchen, he was checking what I was doing and, but like, I think within about 3 weeks, that's when he said, this girl, she's getting it now. I think she's one of us. And I was like, my heart was just like, oh my God.
He said Sarah. He actually said Sarah that time. He's like, I think he still said this girl. I'm pretty sure he still said this girl. But, that was when he started giving me more responsibility, right? Like he started teaching me things himself, like, which is amazing to like actually, learn from this guy, and honestly, if I hadn't been in college, I probably would have stayed in the industry. I mean, I really, I absolutely loved it. When I went back to Charleston to go to school, I tried to get a job. There's so many great restaurants in Charleston, and I tried to get a job, but because I was in school, it's just the schedule. I could have gotten a waitressing job, and I did not want to work front of house at all. Like, I just wanted to be in the back, where I could like freely go out and smoke cigarettes and, shoot the shit and not care, like not care who was seeing what. I didn't want to do fine dining, that place, it was fine dining in terms of like the cost and the way that they handled ingredients and all that stuff. But I mean, in the back, it was just a bunch of scrappy kids, which was that's just my favorite place. So anyway, those are my stories. That story, along with your father, explains to me why you're so meticulous with everything you do. Yeah. That's discipline. That's really discipline. Yeah, discipline. There you go, Sarah.
We're trying to do a good job, right? We're trying to do like a really good job. No, but like we both swag.
Look at your swag, though.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Tell us about the swag and how we can get that. Because I need
you guys may have seen, right? We opened a shop. This is a freaking bottle opener. I think it's like $10 or something. And like it's got a magnet, so it sticks to your. But like I just thought, like that's so cool. And then I have this. Cool. This is one of our shirts. This is the women's V-neck. And then
show the back, Sarah. Show the back. Show the back of your shirt.
Yeah, this is a little wine tote. But anyway, we have a
cute,
shop.
Right?
It is.
You told me it was cute. I said I couldn't use cute, but I'll use it now.
You can.
It's cool for most guys. It's cool.
Yeah. So there's all kinds of stuff, right? And then, if you want to, buy some of our stuff and support the show, that helps Fred and I to do more fun stuff. And actually like advertise and try to get more subscribers and followers and all that. So, So
just so everyone knows, I'm getting swagged out too. Sarah surprised me with that. Was my surprise today.
It just came yesterday.
So next time you guys see us, I will be swagged out. I promise, because I'm so
People
jealous
are gonna get
right now.
Sick of seeing.
Yeah, I told you I was jealous. So this was fun, Sarah. This was really really fun.
Yeah. All right. And we're going to do more of these. Fred actually has to bolt and go do his actual job.
Side dish.
Yes. We're going to do more side dishes in the future. Fun. Hopefully you guys thought this was fun as well. So we're going to do another one of these at the end of the season. Coming up this season, we have, a few female chefs that we're excited about that all come from different backgrounds and different experiences, all over the country. We got a couple of fun men in different capacities. Yes. I think it's gonna be a really interesting second half of the first season, and then maybe I'll get to take a nap at some point.
I know, right? I know. Great job, though, Sarah.
We're just trying to get it out.
Great job.
We're trying to get it out. Great.
We're doing good.
Yeah,
We're doing one day we're gonna look back at this and be like, damn, remember when we started this and we had to do this, and this, and now look at us.
And we're not paying anyone to do it yet, right? So thank you again to everybody who listens.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for your support. And and tell us, give us feedback, right? Like, let us know, what you want to hear. Let us know if you know anybody that you think would be a good fit for the show, or if you want to come on the show. You can go to our website, turnburn.co, or you can email us podcast@turnburn.co. And thanks again.
And stay out of the weeds.
Stay out of the weeds.